When considering creating your story to assist in enterprise selling, we believe it's helpful to keep these four tenets in mind. 1. Selling is educating. 2. Educating is storytelling. 3. Story is software, the primary focus of this particular recording. And 4. The best stories are in the field. To begin, as shared in the book The Challenge of Sale, CEB discovered that over a majority of the top enterprise salespeople educate their customers. Therefore, the story you create that describes your product or service ultimately needs to facilitate your sales team's ability to be coaches for their customer on how they can better run their businesses. Next, whether you think about teaching your kids a lesson or listening to some of the great political speeches, we realize from our own personal experiences that storytelling really sits at the core of teaching. So why not utilize storytelling techniques to educate your salespeople, partners, and customers? Third, we believe there's much to be gained by leveraging lessons learned in software development to improve our story development. For instance, good software development starts with a software architecture. Likewise, the resulting software is built modularly with relatively small objects that can be more easily developed, managed, updated, and repurposed. In addition, with the popularity these days of software being delivered online, good software is deployed with agility, so it can be updated and released on a daily basis if warranted. This also means some form of release management is also implemented. And of course, these days, good software development also needs to have an eye on how the application will run on mobile devices. Finally, you'll deploy your best team of developers to build the various modules outlined in the software architecture. Given different developers have different levels of expertise, you'll assign developers to modules where their expertise is well aligned with the module's development requirements. These approaches to good software development evolve from lessons learned, such as we learned in the old days when we built large monolithic programs that these take a long time to create and are difficult to manage and support. Therefore, we transitioned to building a set of smaller modules that hang together through well-defined interfaces. In the old days, we also released software on set, say, 6 to 12-month release trains, which nowadays lacks the agility required to support our current online software as a service deployments. And finally, the younger generation may not even know this, but we used to release software on floppy disks and CDs, an approach that seems today as archaic at best. That said, if you look at how stories are developed today, there are parallels to be drawn, such as we build large text and slide-based documents such as 10-page white papers, which take a long time to create. We release these documents as PDFs and PowerPoint in an age when many of us are consuming our content on mobile devices, not well suited for reading 10-page white papers. And given it takes so long to create these documents, they're often not updated and become outdated. Therefore, we believe good story development can borrow from what has been learned over many years of developing software. First, if you're going to tell a relatively complicated story to describe a relatively complicated product, then it seems to make sense you'll want to architect the story from the beginning. Otherwise, you'll end up with a bunch of disconnected pieces of collateral. Second, if you create your story elements as large monolithic pieces of content, then it's going to take a long time to create and debug and have little reuse opportunity. Therefore, we believe each story module, or what we call a precision story, needs to be architected to be able to be recorded in 8 minutes or less. In addition, the story architecture must also provide well-defined interfaces between modules. And by incorporating a story architecture built with small modular precision stories, this offers the ability to be very agile in your storytelling, as individual recordings can be re-recorded and updated as need be, separate from the other modules. This allows your story to always be kept up to date. This implies we also need a story release management system in place so we can manage story updates. There are actually two types of updates to consider. One, minor bug fixes where an individual story needs to be updated, and two, major new releases where the overall story needs to be updated to align with a major new release of the product or service. Next, given people are consuming more and more of their content on their mobile devices, story needs to be built to be optimally consumed via mobile. This means prioritizing the creation of recordings over the creation of large text-based collateral and slide decks. Next, we believe the best stories are in the field where customers have their story as to why they bought your product, and your sales team is continuously learning what story resonates with the customer to help educate them to ultimately buy. Therefore, you also need to map your best storytellers to create the story modules that leverages their expertise. These storytellers may very likely come from the field and may even be chosen because they are the people your sales team would most like to have in front of the customer, answering the specific questions outlined in the story architecture. And with that, this concludes what are some story as software considerations you might consider when thinking through your story development. Ultimately creating an overall story that helps your sales team coach their customers on how better to run their businesses. And if you're interested in how we apply story as software principles to assist our customers in their story development, I encourage you to view the next recording on how to create a story architecture built with PrecisionStory.